In a Violent Nature comes out this week, and I had the privilege to be able to sit down and watch this movie early. Thank you, IFC. Let's talk a little bit about this one without spoilers. Hey everybody, before we get into today's early review, I'd like to quickly thank my wonderful patrons out there. Without your support of my little channel here, I wouldn't be able to upload as frequently as I do, and I'm incredibly grateful for you all. Please consider signing up for my Patreon today to keep this channel going by clicking on the link in the description of this video or by pressing the join button on this page. Thank you again to my patrons. Now let's get into the review. In a Violent Nature is going to be one of the most divisive movies of the year, with folks either loving it or hating it. I think for that reason alone, every slasher fan needs to get out to the theaters to check this one out this upcoming weekend. It might be hopeless to even ask that considering Furiosa's numbers, but we'll just have to see. Starting with the obvious question that I'm sure many of you have, is it boring watching this pseudo-Jason walk through the woods this entire movie? And does this film really make you want to throw up? To that, I would say your perception of this movie has already been warped by the somewhat misleading marketing. Advertisements for this film promise a Terrifier 2 level experience where you'll need a barf bag and an old man's patience to get through this one. Both of these things are pretty far from the truth. While the kills were excellent, and we will get to them in a minute here, Johnny's killing style is very different from Art the Clown's. Where Art enjoys killing his victims, so much so to the point that it makes him laugh and the audience vomit, Johnny is more akin to, well, Jason Voorhees. He gets in and he gets out. Dude is here to end lives and resume his dirt nap. Although we do get a ton of backstory and a few moments of personality from our killer that I really enjoyed, he is your essential non-verbal slasher that you kind of want to root for. More importantly though, this movie is anything but slow and boring. Yes, this movie is shot from the killer's perspective, but that doesn't mean the plot isn't constantly being pushed forward by what Johnny is seeing or listening to. Worry not, my friends, you're not just watching the zombie take a hike and occasionally kill camp counselors. The opening scene is a great example of how this movie shows you something in the woods that comes back a few minutes later. On top of those Chekhov's guns, there's also some gorgeous ambiance and atmosphere to really appreciate during these moments. The sound design and cinematography are some of the best of the year, only coming in second to Immaculate that I think takes home the gold so far. My buddy Evan from Rockland Graves Productions says this is one of the most soothing slasher movies he's ever seen. Don't worry, gorehounds, this movie is still terrifically disgusting too. This is a full-on Friday the 13th movie minus the MPAA cutting out all of the extreme gore. Easily one of the strongest facets to In a Violent Nature. While there are plenty of excellent kills in this flick, there's one about halfway through that I think will be talked about for many, many years to come. It is a true original down to shot composition and overall execution. It made me yell out loud in my room and I actually had to rewind it twice. It's unbelievable and would likely make Art the Clown weep. Damien Leone might have some friendly competition this year for best kill. Even though that kill is a major standout, Luke from Splattercast says there's another that he thinks tops it. So if you think this movie is only worth seeing over one significant moment, you would be wrong. This movie has very diverse kills that elicit various different emotions. Luke's favorite, for instance, is just pure pain that clocks in at a little over 8 minutes, while the previously mentioned death is quick, shocking, and beautifully visceral. There's also a moment early on that involves throwing around a dead body that had me in stitches. This movie is a stew of emotions that will make you laugh, reel back in terror, and drive your heart's BPM all the way to 11. Another similarity to Friday the 13th is the overall story. While Johnny's killer origins are certainly different than that of Jason's mommy issues, the cast of meatbags in this flick are no different than your typical Crystal Lake outing. While this is a major criticism I have of the entirety of the Friday the 13th franchise for having shallow characters that you have to hang out with for most of those flicks, it works here in Violent Nature because they skip the bullshit. You're not forced to sit with these bland characters for too long before their deaths. It's much more about the killer's backstory and the history of the location this flick is set. I absolutely loved this element of the film, finding a massive improvement upon the Friday formula. I don't think this is something other films should try to attempt, as it only really works here. It's tough to explain without getting into spoilery specifics, but I don't think there's too much mileage left on this concept. Regardless, I'd love to see this unique film turn into a franchise one day. That's mainly because of the vague and intriguing world that's been set up here, with every new character introduced knowing more and more about the White Pine slaughter than you would expect. There are also blatant references to Friday the 13th if you're down for a little Easter egg hunt. For example, a certain character's likeness is a total reference to a nuisance from Friday Part 3, and the same character's death attempts one-upping a Friday Part 2 kill. I would personally say they succeeded there. On top of that, these annoying vacationing maybe college kids are fucking horny too. Two of our characters are about to bone it out before Johnny interrupts them. I won't say any more than that, but the setup here is a clear homage. Don't worry though, this movie isn't like Five Nights at Freddy's where the only thing going for it is those Easter eggs. That is merely a small part of something much grander. Johnny is not building forts with these camp counselors. This film is only nodding towards what came before it, not ripping it off entirely. I've never seen Jason do some of this crazy-ish. There's really only one big negative I have about the entire film overall, and it's the unfortunately quiet ending. This movie is surprisingly fast-paced and keeps you on the edge of your seat until the very end, where it grinds to a screeching halt. I can't say why, as it would be a massive spoiler, but it's just not how you would expect this thrill ride to resolve. They focus more on reinforcing themes here in the last 10 minutes, opposed to keeping the excitement alive, and I think that might have been a misstep. There is a single moment of tension here and a pretty powerful ending shot, but it feels redundant. The only point of this scene is to drive home something that has already been established many times before in earlier scenes. It's not a deal breaker by any means, but it does come across as unnecessary. You might have also heard through the grapevine that this is an, as the film snobs say, elevated horror film. Ugh. I can assure you it is not. When I say reinforcing themes, I promise I'm not talking about social commentary. This film isn't concerned with that, more so our main character and his environment, just like a lot of the shots of this movie. It feels constantly fitting that these themes are prevalent, but it doesn't excuse the snooze fest final 10 minutes. This movie gets a 9 out of 10 from me, but it's a 10 out of 10 in my heart. As a Friday the 13th fan who's wanted to see Jason back on the big screen for 15 years now, I feel satisfied by this movie in a way that words cannot describe. There have been standout slashers that have come out in the last 5 years, such as Terrifier 2 and Thanksgiving, but this scratched a certain itch for me. I recommend this to slasher fans, but especially Friday the 13th fanatics like myself. If you've watched parts 1 through 4 and said to yourself, damn, I wish that was gorier, this flick is for you. Hell, even Jason Lives fans too. This movie can get very silly at all the right times. Although I've handed out 10 out of 10s to other horror flicks this year, Immaculate literally being the only one, this is my absolute favorite from 2024 thus far. I'll be rewatching this one every summer for years to come, and will be looking forward to whatever Chris Nash makes next. Thank you again to IFC Films for sending me a screener for this flick. I'm so glad that I got to see it early, and I will absolutely be checking it out in theaters this weekend upon its release. Ya boy needs to do a rewatch. In a Violent Nature releases in theaters May 31st, so go see it this upcoming weekend. If you haven't gotten the message yet, see movies at the goddamn theater. Oh my god. Have you seen those numbers from Furiosa? What is going on, dude? Anyways, are you excited for In a Violent Nature? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.